Hello and welcome to Jill Cameron Creations. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss a single thing. Today we're going to be doing a stenciled background in a rainbow. Love me a rainbow. What we are going to be using today is the Altenew Sunshine Stencil along with blending brushes by Stampin' Up! And also some Stampin' Up! Ink. You can do this technique with any inks that you have, any blending tools that you might have. The colors that I'm using from a Stampin' Up! Line is Rail Red, Pumpkin Pie, Daffodil Delight, Granny Apple Green, Seaside Spray, Highland Heather, and Magenta Madness. This technique can be done with blending brushes or sponges, whichever one you prefer. And in the past, I have said that I'm not a real fan of these blending brushes, and I have been using them a lot lately and have become a huge fan. I really do enjoy these blending brushes. I'm still using my dome blenders for my Distress Oxide inks. I still use the dome blenders for a lot of different things. For stencils, I'm finding that these particular brushes do really well. I don't have the white spots in the corners, especially for a detailed stencil such as this. To create this background, I did go in a rainbow order, starting with red, orange, and then worked my way all the way around back to pink. I went back and forth between colors a little bit just to smooth out that transition. The transition actually looks really harsh with the stencil on it, but once you take it off, it doesn't, which I found absolutely fantastic. As you know, Stampin' Up! Inks or most dye inks will actually smooth out over time, so you don't have as much of that differentiation between the darks and the light spots in your ink. And the blending brushes really do help with that as well. For my stencil itself, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm actually turning it a whole lot. I have my paper taped to the back of the stencil instead of taping my stencil down, or in some other method of like putting adhesive on the back of my stencil or anything like that. I just have the four corners taped down with washi tape on the back of the stencil. It allows me to turn it, and it also keeps my paper from moving. Just a tad little itty bitty pieces of washi tape works just fine. There are some stencils that are super detailed that I will have add adhesive to the back of, like a temporary adhesive like Mono Multi or something like that. Just because it's a lot easier to do with a super detailed stencil, especially if it has like loose areas in it. Having that adhesive on the back of it really does help. So it depends on your stencil which way is going to be the best to hold it down. I just went ahead and pulled the washi tape off of the back, and I'm going to clean my mat. I have a mixed media mat under here, so I can very quickly just wipe it down with a rag and a little bit of water. I use that spritzer bottle for a lot of things. Next, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to create the elements that are going to go on our card here. I am using the Study in Watercolor dies. There's a Stampin' a Die Set, but I'm going to use the dies because I wanted to have a little bit of dimension on the front of my card. Die cut the largest element twice out of black cardstock and just glued each piece together, and that's going to go to kind of to the right. I'm going to use the natural shape of it here off to the right on our card panel. Next, I'm going to use a sentiment die from Pink and Maine. It is the Together sentiment. I'm going to be cutting that out of silver glitter cardstock. Remember, not all silver glitter cardstock is created equal. I'm using the kind that when you rub your finger over it, the glitter doesn't come off. It's like that glimmer cardstock. I also got a pack of that kind of cardstock from a big box store a couple years ago, and it just doesn't cut. It has like this weird plastic backing on it, and it doesn't cut with a die. It drives me crazy. So I'm not using that either. I am using, I think this was from Concord and Ninth from several years ago, but there's a lot of different brands out there that is this glimmer kind of cardstock that looks like glitter, but it's not quite glitter, and it doesn't rub off, but it gives that same illusion as glitter cardstock does, which is absolutely perfect. So I'm going to stack that Together sentiment up with white cardstock behind it to give that a little bit of heft too, because I don't like my sentiments to be floppy. I'm going to pair that with a sentiment from that Together stamp set that says "We are better together," and that's so true. We are better together. Over the last little while, I have done a lot of videos that has music in the background instead of voiceovers. I have migraine headaches, and unfortunately, sometimes my migraines just take over my life, and I'm not able to sit down and do voiceovers. And this has been a period of that's what's happened. So I'm hoping that right now I'm going to be able to do voiceovers for a little while longer and get back to a regularly scheduled program of creating cards beautifully and doing that together. I have a couple other little projects I'd like to share with you. I have a challenge blog that's called Make the Cards Challenge, and I'll have a link below in the description. And it is a weekly challenge, and it's different every single week. It's not sponsored, so products you can use whatever you have on hand. And it is everything from color challenges to sketch challenges to use 2 specific things on your card, like use a stencil and some type of flower, you know, just those kinds of things. And I have an amazing design team. Those ladies are just awesome, and I am so proud and so honored to work with all of those ladies. So head over and check that out, and check out their work, and show a little love to my design team over there. They are just absolutely awesome. They're just phenomenal. I love them, and like I said, I'm just honored to work with all of those ladies. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of my cards that say, or some of my videos that say, for Make the Cards Challenge. And it's a new blog, and I started it back in January, and it's been a ton of fun. All right, back to the card. If you've never stacked sentiment die cuts together before, I have a little tip for you. Start in the middle. Put your glue on the top side of your sentiment and stack up. And start in the middle. Don't start on an end, especially if you have one that is really super thin and delicate. If you start in the middle, you're going to have a better connection at the ends of it, because it maintains the shape of the die and how it's supposed to be. So start in the middle of that die. I also have another tip. If you are getting like super bad fuzzies on your die cuts, like around the edges of them, you can check a couple different things. It might just be the die, especially if it's old and it's been used a lot. You can start getting fuzzies on the edges of them. Your die cutting plate, if it's old and been used a ton and it hasn't warped and you're just like, I'm not changing that plate out, it's probably because of the plate. Your die cutting plates, once they start getting really marked up, they don't cut really well in specific areas, but they still cut completely, and it's going to leave those fuzzies behind. It could also be your cardstock itself. I have found over the years that for whatever reason, and it doesn't matter the brand, black cardstock has a notorious habit of getting the little black fuzzies on the edges of it with die cuts, especially on sentiments. I have a feeling that it has to do with just the fibers of the paper. I'm not sure, but I've just noticed that a lot of times you get those black fuzzies. So how do you get rid of those black fuzzies if you have them? One way is actually to take that brush thing right there and very gently go over the edges of it, of your die cut, and on the end of the Spellbinder's tool in one, and it will take them off. You can also rub the edges of it with a piece of rough paper towel, not like something like a store brand inexpensive paper towel. They're kind of rough. Those will actually take the fuzzies off of it as well. Especially, let's say that you have a little bit of a dull blade and you have one of the paper trimmers that's the slide blade in it, and it gets little fuzzies on the side of your paper. A paper towel will take those off too on that. So just a couple tips on how to get rid of fuzzies on your die cut image, your die cuts, no matter if they're sentiments or just regular ones, or even just the cut edge of paper there. A paper towel will help out with that tremendously. If you're wondering how come I stutter and stammer a little bit more than I used to, it's because of the migraines. So I have trouble sometimes getting the word out. I have the word in my head, but it doesn't want to travel properly, and a lot of it has to do with migraines for so long, for so many years. So thank you for sticking around with me through my stammering and stuttering sometimes. And it's not going to get any better. It'll just get worse over the time, but it is what it is. So for the final little sentiment on the card, I'm putting this on with white cardstock and black embossing powder, and I just pulled out a scrap piece here. You see me use a lot of scrap pieces, especially white cardstock and that kind of thing, to use them up. And for my sentiments, I still like to stamp it with a block. I'm not good with a stamp positioning tool like a Misty or Stamparatus or anything. For my sentiments, I prefer to use a stamping block and line it up visually. See, my head is stuck over that now, and line it up that way, and then trim the panel, the piece down into a little strip. I'm using black embossing powder. Black embossing powder is absolutely no different from any other embossing powder, so don't let anybody scare you away from using it. Make sure that you are using a ton of anti-static powder tool on it when you do use it, and that way you're not going to have it sticking to absolutely everything on your white cardstock and it really showing up. I mean, it's just the same as any other embossing powder. It's it's black, so it shows up really, 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 really well when it's on white cardstock. So just a couple of tips for black cardstock. Just use your anti-static powder tool and you'll be okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and heat this up and melt it and then trim it down. And that's going to be our card for today. And I'm going to finish it off with a few little sequins, I think. Nope, iridescent confetti. The sequins that don't have the hole in them and they're flat backed, I'm going to use those. And just place those around the back of our card. And I have the little gum stick thing, a picker, to place those in little dots of adhesive. So thank you so much for joining me today and getting me back on the road of doing voiceovers again. I enjoyed our time together so much. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will have another card for you soon. Y'all have a great day.